Hi, welcome to Break Time with Brakeman. I'm really excited today to have two great guests to talk about their work. I have Glenna Joseph, who's a domestic worker who lives in Brooklyn, and Aijen Poo, who is the director of the National Domestic Worker Alliance. So I'm really excited to hear from both of you. I've known Aijen since you were working in the city, and now you're sort of a national spokesperson on this issue, and you do such great work. And the UAW has supported domestic worker movement issues for a long time, and I feel very proud about that. But we really would love to hear from you and what the challenges are that domestic workers across the country are facing right now. So, Glenna, do you want to? I'd love to hear about sort of you and your work as a domestic worker.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Glenna Joseph, and I am a member of the National Domestic Workers Alliance and the We German Black New York chapter. As a member of the National Domestic Worker, I have been doing a lot of outreach. And when I say outreach, I mean we go to the different parks to meet up with domestic workers, to speak to domestic workers, and to get a better understanding as to what domestic workers go through. And also, I have done a lot of phone banking with the organization. I am a domestic worker. I've been a housekeeper for the past 6 years. And in December 2019, I literally left my job due to unfavorably working conditions. And of course, between December to early March, I was between going to get interviews. And then, of course, the coronavirus came about, and then everything stopped. So, of course, you can only imagine what one goes through at this point in time when you realize, okay, I don't have a job. What am I supposed to do?
Right, absolutely. So, Glenna, can you just tell like an average a day in your life as a domestic worker? You know, what does that look like?
Well, we all know housekeeping could be it's a hard job and it could be very challenging at times. And for me, I was a living housekeeper.
Mhm.
So the hours were long.
Mm.
So on an average, sometimes you would work 10 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours a day. And I must say, thanks to the National Domestic Workers Alliance, because when I entered this industry, I was so uneducated as to you're an hourly paid worker, and when of course, I got educated, and then you realize, oh,
Feel like
disappointed.
it's really bad.
To the
Yeah.
point that when Traki gave me a contract and said, why don't you take it to your employer? And I said, if I do that, I'm going to get terminated because at least 80% of what's on the contract has been violated. So, like I said, housekeeping is hard work and you take your time. And for people like me, I'm very meticulous. So I like order.
Right.
So you put your heart into it because at the end of the day, you want to feel satisfied that, hey, because my work reflects who I am.
Right.
And then when you realize that you're not getting compensated fairly, it breaks your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I just have one more question. When you talked about, prior to all of this, one of the ways that you would organize other domestic workers is going to parks um,
Yes.
and other places. So how does that how does that work? What does that look like?
Well, what we do, of course, we would plan and map out because, especially in the city, you know where you would find domestic workers in the parks, the library. So, of course, it's going to be we organize and we take the time out and we go out into the field and we speak to domestic workers. Some of them are very open and some of them are shy because, of course, we know in that industry is women of color and a lot of us are undocumented. So when you are undocumented, fear of what would happen and fear that your employer is going to retaliate against you. So for that, a lot of workers are afraid to speak out. So it takes a lot of convincing on our part to get their attention, to speak to them and let them understand what the National Domestic Workers stand for, because it advocates for domestic workers. So it's a lot of talking. And even when we do phone banking, I have spent hours doing phone banking. And there are times it literally breaks my heart when you hear some of what domestic workers are going through. It's outrageous. Yes.
Yeah, I remember when we were working on it in New York. Um, yeah, you're so vulnerable in so many ways, and you're often in a situation where there's just nobody else to go to,
Yes.
which is why having an organization like the Domestic Workers Alliance has made such an enormous difference sort of across the country. So Aijen, do you want to talk a little bit about, what are the successes you've had? I know there's a lot of them, and the ongoing challenges, and how can people who would be watching this get involved and help?
Well, thank you. And thank you to Glenna for just laying out so beautifully what domestic workers are dealing with and how we're organizing and trying to respond. And I agree with her. It's really hard out there, and always has been. And that is why we exist as an organization and as a movement to really change that. And women like Glenna are really the heart and soul of our organizing and our organization. So really excited that we got to start with hearing from her, and also just really excited to be speaking to UAW members, because man, this union has been with us every step of the way from the beginning. When we were just starting out and we said, domestic workers really need a Bill of Rights, UAW members were there with us,
Yeah.
every step of the way. And
Eric Schneiderman was the person pushing it, right? With that, but I remember those hearings so vividly. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And every time we needed support and solidarity, UAW members were there. So I have so much love and appreciation for this union, and so grateful to get some time with you. At the National Domestic Workers Alliance, we've given ourselves this goal, this North Star of making every domestic work job in the country a living wage job with benefits and real respect by the year 2030. So we're very, very ambitious, and we do all kinds of things. We are doing all kinds of things to try to achieve our goal. And it's everything from changing legislation, right? New York was the first state in the country to pass a domestic workers Bill of Rights. And that was exactly 10 years ago in 2010. It's the 10-year anniversary of the New York Bill of Rights, which is why we're going back in to try to strengthen it and to try to win more for domestic workers in New York. But since then, we've passed legislation in 8 other states and in 2 cities, in Seattle and in Philadelphia, where we have won very innovative policies to establish a domestic workers standards board, and also portable paid time off for domestic workers in Philadelphia, right? So we're really trying to innovate. What are some new and different ways that we can make sure that domestic workers' rights are protected and that they're safe on the job? And that's more important than ever before in the midst of this COVID crisis, where we have so many women who are out of work and who are really struggling to figure out how they're going to put food on the table, how they're going to keep themselves safe, how they're going to keep the lights on and the phone bills paid. It's really, really a struggle right now. And we have some domestic workers who are continuing to work through the crisis. And some of the caregivers who are working are absolutely essential to our ability to get through this crisis. I've been thinking of a domestic worker that I spoke to recently in Chicago who is a caregiver for an elderly person, and she's the one lifeline
Yeah.
to the world, to food, to medication, to all of these essential needs that she has. And she also has a 12-year-old son who is home from school because the schools are closed. So she has to bring her son to work with her to make sure that her client is safe and protected. And she has to figure out how she does that while keeping everyone safe so that nobody gets exposed to the virus. And she doesn't earn enough to pay for food and to pay for bills, so she's actually incurring thousands of dollars in debt just to pay for basic needs for her family right now, even as she's an essential worker. And I'm hearing so many stories of essential workers who don't have access to protective equipment, who don't have access to testing or treatment or healthcare. And so these are some of the things that we're fighting for right now, to make sure that everyone has protective equipment, that everyone has hazard pay, and that all people are included in some of the federal relief efforts. And we're fighting hard for undocumented workers to be included in the federal relief efforts. There's so many undocumented workers who have given their heart and soul and their labor to our communities and to our economy, and they're being excluded from any kind of support in this moment, and we're fighting that. So that's the kind of work that we're doing in the COVID crisis right now, in addition to providing emergency financial assistance to domestic workers. And I think we're going to get through this because our organizations, our unions and our organizations are what keep us strong. And my hope is that on the other side of this, now that so many Americans understand how many low-wage workers that were invisible are actually essential to our safety and our well-being, that we have an opening to really change the consciousness of this country, to really not just recognize essential workers by clapping for them, but actually protecting workers the way that we all deserve to be protected in this moment and beyond. So I stay hopeful, and leaders like Glenna keep me hopeful, and also the solidarity from our brothers and sisters in unions like UAW also keep me hopeful.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think, if there's two things that I'd like to have come out of this pandemic is exactly what you talked about, is like some sort of recognition that, caretakers, essential frontline workers, they're the least paid, the most under-resourced, and yet they're holding this economy together right now.
That's right.
And the other thing is like how important government is. And what's really sad to me is we have so many undocumented workers, and this CARES Act and it just completely, ignores that whole population of people. And so I know we've signed on to a bunch of petitions, and it's part of our advocacy also. But Ai-jen or Glenna, can you just, as we sort of wrap up, can you tell us, like, if people want to contribute to your relief fund, how can we do that? And if there are advocacy efforts, petitions, letters, calls that can be made, how can we do that?
Great. So if you want to contribute, you can go to our website, domesticworkers.org, and there will be a button there to contribute to the Coronavirus Care Fund, which is offering $400 in cash assistance to domestic workers around the country, including many undocumented workers who will not have any other form of assistance available to them. So we would appreciate that solidarity. And we're also doing an effort to try to push for the Essential Workers Bill of Rights and the inclusion of undocumented workers in the federal relief packages.
Yeah.
And so one thing we're doing to really highlight that is called the Rosie Challenge right now, where we're asking people to take a picture of themselves, a selfie doing the Rosie pose. And then posting that on social media in solidarity with domestic workers.
Is that on your website also?
It's not, but if you go to our Twitter account, which is at Domestic Workers, you'll see lots of people doing the Rosie pose and tagging members of Congress to say, support our caregivers, support our domestic workers, and care for all is the hashtag, care for all.
I'm writing that down. That's something super easy that we can do and that our members would love. So we'll include that in this post. I just really want to thank both of you for getting on this morning. Are there any last words before we wrap up that you want to say right now to UAW and beyond?
I'll let Glenna give us the last word.
Yeah, that's a good
I
idea.
just want to say thank you. Thank you for the support. And it would be nice to have your advocate on behalf of domestic workers because we need our legislators to pass laws to protect us. We need a national domestic workers bill of rights. We need paid sick leave, paid time out. And for me, I'm just hoping when all this is done, employers are able to appreciate the employees and to treat them better because we are the ones that makes all other work possible. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I thank you. And thank you, Glenna, for taking your time to do this. I think it's really important for people to hear from the frontline workers on all of these different issues. And Aijen, thanks for giving us the bigger picture. And we will include these resource links and stuff in the post. So thank you both, and stay safe and keep up the amazing work. And UAW is with you all the way for sure.
Thank you, and much love and care to all the UAW members out there. Stay strong and hopeful and know that the domestic workers are with you.